As soon as the young hunter awoke, he made for the land of illusions. Granted new power, his lost arm and his lost pride were both his to reclaim.
Who brought the marshmallows? 'Cause I'm bringing the fire.
Welcome to another TEPPEN deck guide. My name is Stout, and today we're revisiting Nero from Devil May Cry. This was my top request from you guys on my most recent poll. You asked for something using Devil Breaker, Nero's first hero art. It's 15 AP to give 1 unit plus 3 attack and spillover for 1 attack. Nero is in a tricky position meta-wise. He's not as fast as other aggressive decks like Ashura Senku Akuma. He also can't generate MP as fast as Yon Chun-Li. And he doesn't have reliable board clear like Spike Launch Nergigante. If you're going to play him, you have to accept that Nero's got some dead weight to carry. We're using a black and green build. Feline, Iris, Lair are here to generate extra MP. You've seen these guys before. Disarm is there because Seal is so valuable in the meta right now. It can hamstring powerful Ascension units and so much more. Ultra Lady Karin can also seal the unit in front of her if she ascends. She also has great stats and agility, one of the best legendaries in the game right now. Rainy Turtloid is another Ascension unit who gets more attack and spillover. He's beefy and can dish out a lot of damage. Nidhogg is our unit with combo. He's a 3-cost 1/6 with growth level 5. He gains more hit points at level 2 and more attack at level 3. He has the potential to close out games quickly. Psycho Power and Heartless Experiment are for buffing up our units. You're familiar with them if you've seen some of my previous deck guides. Hake will target a friendly unit with high attack. It then deals damage to a random enemy unit to the attack of the unit you selected. This is green's only real option for board clear. Murderous Spikes is a great choice right now, with so many units being used that have less than 2 attack. And since many of the cards in this deck sacrifice your life points, we're running 2 copies of Sibling Memories. That's 2 MP to give your hero 7 more health. The black element is really popular right now. It has the ability to keep up with a lot of what the Yon Li deck can do, and that's the deck to beat right now in terms of the meta. So Raging Demon, Akuma, Wesker, very popular choices right now because they can make good trades. So one thing you want to keep in mind is when you play these units with 1 attack, you want to have a buff at the ready in case he drops the core Tyrant, which can wipe it out easily. That's not going to happen in this case. As you'll see, he plays the G-Adult, which you'll remember from my Akuma video, spawns the G-Youngs, which are great for cheap Ascension, which is for sure what he's going to go with. So we've got a little bit of ramp on the board. We have a Nidhogg, and we draw into Murderous Spikes, which is great against the G-Adult because it destroys it, removing the ability for it to spawn the G-Young. He chooses to obliterate the Nidhogg, which I think is overzealous here. I think that's a bit too much. Nidhogg wasn't really leveled up at this stage of the game. And I'm still going to be ramping. As you can see here, I've still got a lot of MP boost on the board. And we're behind a little bit HP wise, but that's not a big deal. So we're going to be looking to get this Rainy Turtloid out on the field here quickly. He drops the gate in the middle, which is what we're going to do. Now an unascended gate would be a lot scarier if he had Raging Demon on deck, and he doesn't yet. So out comes the Heartless Experiment. We're going to try and beef up this Turtloid so he can do a proper sweep of our opponent's board here. As you'll see, we activate Devil Breaker, which will give some more attack. Rainy Turtloid already had spillover, but that's okay. So it gets rid of that unit there, and then he ascends into Alexia Ashford, and he gets lucky, and really lucky, and gets the Rainy Turtloid, which is super scary. He attempts to Murderous Spikes on the Iris, but luckily we've got a buff in hand, so our Iris isn't going anywhere yet, because that would have really hurt. Life totals are both very low, but they're also very close. So we play Nidhogg out in the middle. We've got the Iris on the bottom. We have another Murderous Spikes, but it hasn't come into play yet. And unfortunately, we've only got 1 buff and the 2 Hake. So we're going to be looking for ways we can get rid of this Hake here before too long. We activate Heartless Experiment on the Nidhogg to hopefully clear this Junie. I was really hoping that he would give us an opportunity to chain Murderous Spikes on there so he wouldn't get the bonus MP, but we don't get that. So now we're in much better shape. He's got Raging Demon on deck, so we've got to be on the lookout for that. And you can't see it here, but I had Murderous Spikes hovering, and I let go of it right as the Raging Demon activated. So he beat me out there in terms of timing, but just the way the board is split up right now, since he chose to block with the Iris, we just give the Devil Breaker to the Feline up top, dealing the remainder of the damage and closing out that game for Nero. Spoiler alert, Ryu is going to be the next deck guide after this one, but until we get to that point, here's a little Ryu action for you. So right away, our units with high health and shield are going to be great against Ryu. We've got an advantage just because they're beefy. They've got high health totals. That direct damage isn't going to be nearly as effective as it normally would be. So Iris is a good way to start. She's got protection from damage, and she's got a decent health pool. Feline's going to be next because we want to have a bunch of high health guys on the board to really spread out that damage. And as you'll see, he does Agnator into Spiral Pegasus, and a lot of that damage gets sponged up by the shields. And since the Iris was low, that's the best opportunity to put out Rainy Turtloid, as you'll see right there. He uses Young Power Awakened to try and deal 4 damage to our Rainy Turtloid, and in exchange, because we have the bonus MP, we are going to activate a Hake, and we are going to get rid of that. So we're in okay shape right now. We've got plenty more units to ascend into, and since that Feline was already low and I didn't want to waste an ascension, we ascend into our second Rainy Turtloid, which is really good because they're both beefy, they've got a lot of health, and that's something, you know, as I mentioned before, Ryu doesn't deal very well with. The layer coming out on top for some more MP generation, and we're sitting in good shape right now. Now the Hellbat will allow him to keep up. Murderous Spikes in the Ryu matchup, probably the only thing you're going to be able to get it off of is maybe a Magma Tortoise, a Hellbat, or a Guy. Those are going to be the only targets. So the detonation coming out in the middle Turtloid, and then he's going to get Shinku on the bottom one. That's pretty good for him. This is kind of the way that Ryu keeps up, by just making really, really good trades, because that's what he did. He burned 2 Turtloids pretty effectively, but we're okay. We're generating MP faster than him. We've got a life lead. We have, you know, things that we can heal with on set. Now, Lagiacrus comes out, and the reason I'm going to do spikes here is because I want to keep that layer alive a little bit longer, and like I mentioned before, not a ton of really valuable opportunities for Murderous Spikes there. So if I can make the trades more optimal for the layer, that's what I'm going to choose to do here. We activate Psycho Power, throwing it out on the Nidhogg. You may notice that we are sitting on 2 Devil Breakers, and that's because we haven't really had a really solid opportunity to use them yet. Now, I activated this Devil Breaker late. My intention was I was going to activate it to get another swing off on that Ryu, but I was just late. So don't be slow like me, be faster. So we're about to close this out. Rashid comes out in the middle. We throw down Iris to level up the Nidhogg, and we have considerable resources on this board. He's nowhere close to Shinku Hadouken, so he's going to have to do some serious work here. We ascend into the Rainy Turtloid to provide some more beef to the board. We give the spillover effect and the bonus attack to the Nidhogg, and layer closes it out. So those really beefy, high HP units coming in handy against Ryu. I know you guys love to see Resonate lose, so this one is for you. The reason I wanted to show this shorter replay is specifically for a technique that I use that enables me to get a really good trade. So there's a thing, and it's been called a lot of things. Iowa likes to call it action cheesing, whatever you want to call it. All it is the idea of using your hero art at a very specific point to interrupt anything that your opponent could try to do to counter what it is that's happening on the board. And you're going to see it here pretty quickly. So the Hashenko comes out, and it's obvious this is the big Resonate. He throws Hookshot on it, so it's flying to prevent my Rainy Turtloid from trading with it. So at this point, I'm like, okay, we need to boost the Turtloid, and hopefully we'll get a Hake off here and get some decent damage. So the Rainy Turtloid is now a 6/10, which is really good. We're going to be looking to throw out the Hake, and in a perfect world, be able to deal damage at the last second. So what happens here is right now I'm activating the Devil Breaker, and you will notice I did it right before the instant that that attack comes out, basically preventing him from activating the Dark Hold. So he cannot save his Ashenko, and he loses. So if you've never used this technique before, you need to try it out. Let's talk about fours. It's an incredibly popular deck right now. I think it will fall off quite a bit when the nerfs come into effect in February. If you haven't watched that video where I talk about that, you should definitely go do that. I'll include a link up here in the top in the card so you can go check that out. So we're going to throw Iris out because we need to start ramping. We need to be able to keep up with what Shadowblade Morgan is able to do. Quechua comes out into Lupo. Quechua is kind of an unusual choice for 4s in my opinion, but you're going to see here that it actually does end up doing some work for him. So since we have the 2 Irises out, we're going to try and beef them up. Soul Reflect, which makes the Lupo even stronger, which is unfortunate, not something that you want to see, but we still do get a Heartless Experiment out to do a little bit of damage with that Iris, and we lose our middle Iris, so we throw out the Feline to begin ramping some more. Murderous Spikes in hand, and really the best opportunity would be to go ahead and get rid of this Quechua, to go ahead and burn it before it gets the halt effect off and really puts us super far behind. You're just going to have to wait and see. And then the Feline is stolen by the 4 Eyes, which is really unfortunate because now not only does he have a super effective deck, he has ramp. Beltway comes out, bouncing our unit, and then the Shadow Blade to clean up our board, and we are super far behind in what seems like an instant, and that's just what 4s has the ability to do. And I want to talk about Beltway here in just a second because it's kind of a conversation piece with the upcoming nerf. Beltway is super good because if you think about it, you're paying 4 MP to not only get a unit on the board, but you're also setting your opponent back 4 MP instantly with no chance to counter that. And that's huge. I definitely think the Beltway nerf that is coming up is justified. I just wish there had been more in that balance change patch, but I ranted about that enough in another video. Another Beltway comes out, setting me even further behind, so we've got to scramble and try to get some MP, but it's definitely not looking good for us. We have Ultra Lady Karin, but even if we seal this Oro, the Oro's not, the only threat on this board. We get rid of his ramp, which is fantastic, but we're still really far behind. And as you're going to see, the 3rd Beltway comes out and pretty much just decides this match in his favor. He's got a Shadow Blade coming up here on deck. He's not too far away from it. The only thing we can hope to do is to beef up our units on the board and hopefully get some mileage out of it. We throw the Psycho Power on the Feline, but we're low on health at this stage of the game, and Hell Antenora comes out in the middle, which is just going to completely scramble the brains of my units just because Hell Antenora is so good. Shadowblade comes out in the middle to clean up the Nidhogg, keeping him at 30 life. Hell Antenora drops me down to 1. We're just kind of, we're a fish out of water at this point, flailing around, and there's nothing I can do, so I choose to surrender. 4s is super good, but watch out for that nerf that's incoming. Temptation is not something you're going to see a lot of in the meta right now, and you'll see here in just a second some unconventional card choices, so I really wanted to include this match because it is something a little bit different. Right away, we're going to want to try and ramp, and then Ada1 comes out for the stealth. That's nothing new for a Resonate style deck, but what you're going to see here in just a second, that this isn't actually Resonate-y at all. It's totally something different. So we're going to try and ramp as much as we can, get as many of our units down on the board that are building up our MP resources. We're going to ascend into Rainy Turtloid because we don't want to just trade with this Ada Wong. We want to keep the value of the unit on the board. Now, Brainwash is something we need to keep in mind as we buff these units up, especially because Surge of Demonic Power comes out, which, if you remember, that decreases the cost of all cards in both players' hands and EX pockets down to 1. We're going to use that bonus MP to not only use a Psycho Power, but also to cycle a card, just to see what we can get in our hands, and we're in alright shape. And then out comes Arius Argisax. That is that unit in the middle that is ascended, has damage resistance. It's not something you run into all the time. And now he is going to give it stealth, which means it is swinging unblockable hits, and it's going to be really hard for Nero to take that monster down because all Nero has is just swinging and hitting a unit. And if that damage is reduced to 1 all the time, that is a ton of work that Nero has to put in. So we're going to ascend over the Rainy Turtloid into a new one so we can effectively trade as much as we can. And we draw into Ultra Lady Karin, which is sweet because he will seal that effect, making that thing a lot less scary. But he has another Arius Argisax, which comes out in the bottom. Again, we don't really have a lot of ways that we can deal with this. One way that we can kind of get around it, and even then it's not very good because he's stealthing again, is Hake. Hake will be able to deal extra damage to this unit. It's cheap, especially when he only has 1 unit on the board, which is the situation we find ourselves in right now. So we get this thing down to 3, and we're going to be looking to burn some of those Hakes. He fills out his top 2 slots of the board there. We throw out the Hake, which unfortunately does not get a good trade for us. It just leaves 1 lane opening with the lair. We throw out another Iris, and then we're just going to kind of sit on this Devil Breaker to find a good opportunity to use it. The idea of chump blocking here isn't really a thing because that thing is unblockable, and Tigrex comes out on top. So there's a lot of pressure on us to do well, especially because the Temptation comes out, freezing our units, which this deck, the only way it can get around any of this stuff is just with direct damage. Iris is a great way to block Tigrex. We throw her out on top, and of course, not really showing any signs of wanting to seal that Tigrex on his own. We get Hake, which is fantastic, and we actually get it on the correct unit, which is awesome. We try to clean it up with the second Hake, roll the dice, and we actually do get it. So we're going to clean up that unit on the bottom, leaving only the Tigrex, which is still kind of scary, don't get me wrong, but we have enough units that we can flood the board and clean things up. So now we're in a much better situation. Really scary before, but we're in a better situation now, and we're just waiting. And as you can see, he does not have the ability to put a unit down, and we just barely managed to clinch out that victory. Nero could really use some love in that upcoming balance patch I mentioned that's coming in March. He really shined in December and November, but he's really fallen off since then, and that's because there are so many other heroes in the game that do what Nero does. They just do it a lot better. But Nero was one of my favorite heroes, and it was a ton of fun revisiting him, and I hope it was fun for you too. Let me know what you think of the deck in the comments. That's also the best place to tell me what you want to see me cover next for TEPPEN. I've got a Ryu deck guide in the works since that was also very highly requested. Until that comes out, take care, and I'll see you next time.